Okay, so we're recording. So welcome and thank you for spending the time in coming to consider our program for your next steps in postgraduate education, looking at sport and exercise psychology. I'm Danny Holmes, the course leader, and what we'll do in this session is lead you through an overview of what studying a sport and exercise psychology MSc at UE looks like, who would be teaching you, why our course is unique to other courses, or what some of our unique selling points relative to other courses, and what have our students said about studying with us. I think often that it can be helpful to get a feel for a program. So just kind of a broad introduction to UE in Bristol. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but UE continues to heavily invest into its campus, building out new student accommodation, new laboratories, new public study spaces. So there are some great facilities for you to come and make use of when you're on campus. We also have a well-connected campus into the city, so there's direct transport in and out of the city. You're not in the middle of the city, which has benefits for it being quiet if you need to study quietly, but also there's lots of eateries. There's a really diverse city and diverse communities. A lot of people can find their place in a community within Bristol, from vegans to music scenes to comedy scenes. And there's also, I think, a thriving startup businesses. So lots of people are trying to set up themselves in Bristol. And there's 2 universities in Bristol, which means it's a thriving city. And our campus is growing and our campus is diverse. And as I said, we have some really interesting technology, which we'll talk you through. So we have our libraries. So libraries, I think, are more than bricks and mortar now. We do have lots of printed books in our physical libraries. Our French A library is open 24/7. So at any point you want to go and study in a warm, safe, dedicated environment, you can come onto campus and engage and use our library. We also have a vast digital catalogue of journals, of textbooks. And when you engage on the course, all your core reading will be provided to you electronically. And we will also give you training in how to utilize this through our librarians, which are amazing. We've got some great specialist facilities. So we have now psychology lab spaces, which I'll show some images of. We have some immersive technology, which we're using, such as VR headsets and immersive spaces where you're right in the middle of a room. I'm currently looking at making use of the flight simulators, and I'll share why in a sec. We have some great social spaces. We have Student Union, we have our cinema space, we have numerous cafes, Starbucks. And then if you're an athlete, there is some really nice facilities here. So we have some high-level athletes that come and study on our program while competing. We also have some people that just want to continue university level sport. So we have our Centre for Sport, which has UK leading squash programs, UK leading American football programs, basketball programs. We're growing in ultimate frisbee performance programs, volleyball performance programs, and there's centralized training facilities for people as well as individual sport programs, which we can talk to you further about if that's something you're looking at pursuing. So as I said, we have our new lab spaces, which we as a program make use of when we're on campus together. So you can see that image on the top left there is an overview of our cluster lab spaces where we can go into the lab, sit around screens. We've set up tasks, be it using things such as the biofeedback technology to look at heart rate variability or sweat rates for skin conductance for performance under pressure. We have EEG kit. So if you're looking to do some research, looking at neural activity across the brain, you'd have opportunity to make use of that. There's driving simulators. We also have eye tracking technology. So you can utilize this, and we do labs using this. So for example, looking at perception and action. So how do we anticipate a tennis serve? How does a goalkeeper decide where a penalty is going? So we look at research around that and make sure that you're capable and experienced of using some of this equipment. So there's strong physical equipment, but also I think much more to this program is the people that deliver on it. and some of the digital capabilities too, which we'll go through. So as I said, I'm the program leader, and I will be overseeing your studies if you come and study with us, as well as I lead on one of the modules called psychological skills and supervise some dissertations. I've been at UE now for over 6 years, and I'm really proud to be part of this program, developing the program. I am an accredited psychologist, so I am a sports psychologist accredited with CASES, which is one of 2 accrediting bodies in the UK. I still actively work in elite sport, and my portfolio typically has been within elite football. So I've spent, I think, over 10 years working in Premier League football now, working across Fulham Football Club, Sunderland Football Club, and most recently doing some consultancy work with AFC Bournemouth. So you can see there, that was one of the group of athletes I work with at the end of the season. I've also had experience working in some elite military units, supporting there, and have done some consultancy around this. And my research interest is both in performance under pressure and strategies around this, but also my PhD thesis is actually in barriers to engage in mental health support in elite professional football, and some publications coming out off the back of that now. 2 other key staff members on the programme that I think is worth introducing you to here is Dr. Lindsay Woodford, who's been on the programme for over 10 years now. She, again, is a accredited sport and exercise psychologist. She works in applied practice. So that image at the bottom there is her working with England Rugby. She spent time working with the Roses in their successful sport programme. She's also worked in elite rugby with Bristol Bears. She's worked in elite cricket at Western Storm. She works with the England adaptive surf team. And she's just had a book published called The Sport Parent. So another experienced practitioner. And Marcus now is our newest sports psychologist on the team. We have other academics working the programme. He's a pin-up for the programme, really, because Marcus came through and studied on the MSc and then went on to study for his stage 2 and develop his own consultancy business. He's now working as the men's first team psychologist at Gloucester Cricket, works with some of the women as well, has experience working with Bristol Bears Rugby, and teaches across some of the sport and exercise components of the programme. And we invited him back we opened up and looked for people, and Marcus was really strong in coming back to work and deliver on the programme. So there's 3 accredited sport and exercise psychologists in the core teaching team, as well as a range of other academics. So we've got a world-leading appearance research unit in our psychology department, and some leading academics there. We have Victoria Clark, who is one of the world leaders in thematic analysis of Braun and Clark's thematic analysis papers. So there are numerous individuals with a range of interests that you'll have opportunity to engage with, but the core teaching team will be us as core sport and exercise psychologists. I guess, why is that important? Well, we recently reaccredited with the BPS, so we are a BPS accredited program. So we are stage 1 as a training route, and we were asked to present to them on some of what we think are individual components of the program that we're really proud of. And one of it is that we are a practitioner academic teaching team. So we are actively engaged in research, but 3 of us are HCPC accredited sports psychologists, and we are accredited across bases and now cases. We also supervise people through the stage 2 process, and we have quite a wealth, as I've just shared, of work in elite sport and a range of other non-elite sport populations. So we bring that to the classroom. We bring that into our digital learning spaces. We don't just read books and then present information to you. We have experiences of working around this, and we think that's really important. We think we want to set you up to go forward and be successful. We want you, therefore, to understand, how do we apply this knowledge? How does it actually look in real life? Right? What are some of the contextual challenges will be around this area? And we can lead discussions around this. We share our experiences around this, and we get you to think critically around this. And I think by being in these settings, we can help set you up with what we believe is a syllabus that allows you to go on and be successful. One of the other unique components of the programme is our blended learning approach. So we take an approach whereby We are on campus intermittently for blocks of teaching. So if you're full-time, typically it's 3-day blocks, and there's 5 of them at the minute per year. And then we then go into an online digital learning space outside of those weeks where you engage with the course in a flexible, asynchronous way. So you engage with that content at your own pace. So on an off-campus typical learning week, we will, if you're on a module, they will release some learning content for you, and that will typically consist of an introduction to the content, a recorded lecture around that content, some reading, and then some engagement activity to engage with that content area. And we believe this really appeals to people who are high-level athletes trying to train at their own pace. If they are working professionals trying to sustain careers or have other commitments, or those who just like to learn independently, flexibly, and then come together to put things to practice. What I'm going to quickly do is share my screen to show you what a typical learning week looks like in one of the modules. So let me just change over to... Okay, so this is one of the modules I lead on, psychological skills. And you can see here, so these are all different topics in the week. We release them 1 week at a time. And then we would put an announcement out on the Monday to say, this week we're looking at confidence. The content has now been made available. And you would go here and you'd see this content folder for confidence. You then open that up. And within that, you can see, so I'm leading this topic for the week. So I've done a 2-minute intro. What are we talking about? Why is it important? What are we going to ask of you this week? You can then see a little worksheet to use for your reflections through the week. So capturing some of your thoughts. For this one, it's helpful because there's an optional assessment question that people can engage with. You can then see a recorded lecture for you to watch as many times as you want at your own pace. You can watch it at 1.5 speed or actual speed, or slow it down if English isn't your first language. We can see a copy of the lecture slides there. I've then identified some core reading, and you click that link to follow through to that core reading. And there's some questions to ask of the reading. So it's not just read this for the sake of it. So it's purposeful. We then put out some optional activity. So here, this is about developing confidence interventions. And then there's something new for the program, which we've introduced recently, using Blackboard Ultra's new functionality. And there's some options for us to use AI. So what often we are asking them to do, and where it historically would have been, okay, here's the situation, write a response. We now have trained some AI bots to take on roles for us. So here we've got an AI bot who's going to take on the role of an athlete. And we ask you some questions that we're going to ask you to understand what source of confidence this week for this athlete engages with, and what we may want to consider from an applied lens. But you have a conversation as if you're a psychologist. And we think that's going to be really rich for bringing this critical understanding of information to life. And then us as staff can jump into that and look at what you've done and add feedback or comments on that. So that's like a typical learning week. We are currently exploring the idea of we're piloting something which is virtual reality AI role plays, whereby you actually be sitting across from someone virtually or on your screen, and we'll train situations such as working through a CBT lens, and then you look to interact with that. So we're looking, and we're trying to integrate tech as it develops into this program, so that if you're not on campus, it's a really interactive, practical way to engage a topic in a comfortable way that you maybe, if you're worried about how partner work works, that you're doing it in a safer space. So that's some of our off-campus work. And then what we try to hold our on-campus work for is for practical engagement. So on Lindsay's module, which we'll look at, there's lots of role play work where you are looking at developing counselling skills. So how do we use open questions, affirmations, reflections, summaries? In Sight Skills, we do some skill acquisition work. So we'll look at things such as how do we design putting practice, but looking at just general skill acquisition theory. We think about using eye tracking technology, biofeedback, immersive spaces. So we try to make sessions interactive. We also think about actually trying to engage as if we were like athletes in a workshop. So, okay, design a workshop on self-talk for a group of football players. and maybe people design activities using equipment we bring in, and then we reflect on how that landed based on the theory, because we know you can engage some of the content remotely. So as hopefully that kind of emphasizes on campus when we're together is practical, engaging. Then off campus is engaging, but obviously it's more asynchronous. And then on top of that, we have optional weekly drop-in sessions, 1 hour online, where you can we advertise the topic the week before, and you can engage in discussion around that topic. We have optional on-campus weekly drop-in sessions where you can come in with any questions around any content from the previous week. And each academic teacher in the program has office hours where you can click a button and sign up to meet with them to discuss anything to do with your studies. So I think hopefully that shines light on the blended learning approach. I'll go on to what the rough pattern may look like as we go on through the slides. But we think this is unique, and students kind of feedback positively about the flexibility it gives them. And then one of the other things that people feedback really positively about is this is like our extracurricular activity. So we look to not only give you an applied understanding of sport and exercise psychology, but we will present to you opportunities to be engaged with some applied work throughout your studies while with us. So we do that under our umbrella of the Sport Psychology Interest Group, Sport PIG for short, which there's often a debate if we could find a better name for that. But what we look to do is advertise projects, which we then supervise. And this isn't assessed, this isn't part of your curriculum. It's if you'd like to engage with this and you're interested in it, then we will support you in doing so. So in recent years, students have engaged with, say, England Surfing, delivering workshops. So last year and repeated years, they're coming back again this year, delivering to the England adaptive surfing team. They've gone down to the Wave to deliver some stuff actually on the side of their training sessions, some online work. We've delivered sessions to Bristol Bears Rugby Academy, Bristol Rovers Academy, Western Storm Cricket, Wiltshire Badminton, Bristol Athletics. We developed some resources for AFC Bournemouth's Academy, and we also work with some UE student athletes. So there will be opportunity to deliver content. And what we understand is this not only gives you opportunity to practice skills that we are looking at in the course, but from an employability stance, we think this sets you up for gaining opportunities as you come out of the program, because you already have some opportunities we can vouch for. And you might be able to talk with more experience as you go into interviews or have skill sets to go and work independently. So in terms of the nuts and bolts of the program, I guess that's the unique selling points and the unique kind of factors to consider us. In terms of what does the program look like? So as a master's program in the UK, it's 1 year full time. If you do it part time, it's 2 years. We look to, let's say, look at the applied use of sport and exercise psychology and kind of engage with it quite critically. It, as I mentioned, feeds into the stage 2 accreditation process if you're considering those routes. And we do a lot of work throughout the course of what does the next steps look like? What is accrediting with the British Psychological Society or cases look like? What's the merits of either of these? Or what other routes, such as PhDs or working in exercise populations? And there are 6 core modules. There are no optional modules on the program. So the first 3 modules there is what you do if you're part-time, and then you go on to the 4th, 5th, and 6th modules if you're going to second year. If you're full-time, you do all 6. You do them all at once. So if it's 30 credits, it's delivered across term 1 and term 2, which you can see those first 4 are. If it's 15 credits, it's just delivered in term 1, and it has 1 assessment. If it's 30 credits, typically it has 2 assessments. And you can see your dissertation in psychology is 45 credits. That's because it's a large body of work. And it actually runs for 12 months. So you don't submit that project until September, which gives you a bit of breathing space over the summer to really focus on your project and develop something you want to be proud of. And people are often proud of what they deliver. And as you can see there, so each session, each module will have something each week, be that online, or if it's an on-campus teaching block, it'll be in person. So psychological skills is a module that I lead on, and this is really popular with the students. We focus kind of on 3 key areas. We look at skill acquisition and skill performance. So how do people develop expertise? Is it hours of practice? Is it type of practice? We look at that within motor and perceptual lenses, and then consider factors such as how does this impact performance under pressure. We then pivot to look at constructs, so it flows nicely to think of things such as, okay, well, what about confidence? How does that impact performance? What impacts confidence? We look at motivation, anxiety. We consider contrasting things such as resilience and mental toughness. And then from constructs, we then progress to look at strategies. So we consider a range of psychological strategies that could support performance and well-being, but typically we focus on performance in this module. So we look at things such as self-talk, we look at biofeedback, we look at goal setting, we look at music, we look at imagery. So a range of different approaches and what's their utility in applied sport and exercise psychology context. And this ties into our assessment strategy. So assessment 1 is a video portfolio. There's lots of autonomy, as you'll hear through our assessment strategy in the course. So the assessments for this is you get each week in term 1 an optional question you choose from, and you just have to choose 2 questions across that term, one from skill acquisition and one from constructs, and create a 5-minute video of you responding to that question using the content from the week. And you could submit that at any point, and I give feedback. And then the second one is really applied. So we will advertise and share some athlete cases. So these are constructed for the module, 6 cases. You choose one and you respond to that case as if you're working with that as your client. Okay, in this case, it is evident this athlete seems to have low confidence. We then talk about confidence as a construct, critically appraising it, and then we go, what would we do with this athlete? What psychological skill strategy are we going to use to support them around confidence? Then you'd critically appraise and discuss self-talk, utility of self-talk, self-talk interventions, what intervention you do to support this. So across 6 weeks, this is how we're going to do it. So that's the type of thing you do on stage 2, but you would actually be then doing the work alongside that. So this is a popular module. We have CEPR, conducting and evaluating psychological research. So this module is our research methods module, if we want to use a really reductive term. So we consider quite a broad volume of content, and we think it's really important, especially in maybe an AI age where people are getting information and they're not kind of engaging with critically understanding the sources. Why we think it's really important with people studying master's level is actually, can we critically appraise source information? Can we look at research design? Can we look at conclusions made? And to do that, we need to understand, how do we go about conducting these tests? What is power analysis? How do we analyze data in a qualitative way that's rigorous? So we will teach you quantitative and qualitative research methods. We will engage with that to some extent critically. We also teach how to conduct systematic reviews of literature, especially how do we engage with sources to understand, summarize an area of what has been conducted in this area. And we assess you on both of them. So we think, again, they're practical. So you will do your own systematic review. You're taught how to do it, and then you conduct one on a topic of your choice. So it fulfills your interest. We then ask you to do an assessment where we will give you some hypothetical data to analyze. So you demonstrate some quantitative data analysis, and also then we give you a research question and you develop a qualitative research design for us. So lots of choice again in that module. We have contemporary issues in sports psychology, which Lindsay Woodford leads on. So this has a couple of key considerations. We focus on social processes in sport. So we think of things such as coach-athlete relationships, parent-athlete relationships, athlete-athlete relationships, such as group dynamics. We think of organizational culture. And across those topics, at some point, you will be asked to develop a 20-minute presentation on one social process of your choice. So I'm going to look at group cohesion in elite sport and the impact that has on performance. So you choose our performance and well-being and do a presentation on what we're talking about, what research being conducted, what would I summarize, what are the applied considerations. Again, lots of autonomy. We then consider kind of away from some of the social processes, but we look at contemporary issues and like well-being and illness factors. So we consider things such as injury, doping. We consider equality such as racism in sport, gender, sexuality, and we also think things such as depression, eating disorders, addiction, and you choose a clinical topic of what we cover on the module, and then write a clinical essay around this. So this is what the topic is. This is definition. This is some of the prevalence. This is how we measure prevalence. Is this different to general public? Why do we think it's like this in this sport? How do we treat that? So we support you in developing a critical understanding of an area of your choice. Professional practice in sports psychology is a really applied module. So we follow through the consultancy process kind of from before we start with the client to how do we then wrap up. And we look at a range of different approaches. So we will follow Rich Keegan's book of being a sports psychologist is really helpful for us in considering. So what is our practicing philosophy? How do we go about working in sports psychology? How do we set up with a client? What are our boundaries in practice? How do we find clients? How do we do a client intake? How do we do a needs analysis? How do we then sit down and start building a rapport with an individual? What are counselling skills we can use to support them exploring different things like experiences or what they want to bring to the table? We then consider different frameworks. So how would this look through maybe a cognitive behavioural therapy approach, through a rational emotive behavioural therapy, through acceptance commitment therapy? So we look at it through different frameworks and again, understanding what they would look like. We then consider, okay, well, how would we evaluate the effectiveness of our practice? How do we monitor? And we engage with this in terms of an assessment strategy quite practically. So you do a one-to-one role play where you'll be on campus in person. You'll have opportunity to practice. You'll know who you're going to be with, what athlete case you're going to have. And you sit down and do a 15-minute role play where you do it as if you're meeting that client for the first time, doing initial intake to understand what they've been experiencing or what they want to get from the work you're doing. But also, how do we show our listening skills? How do we do a safe intake where we set up ethical boundaries of practice? And we teach you all that. So it's really practical and skills-based. And then the second assessment on that module is a reflection. How did that go? Based on what I understand around this area, based on what I aim to get from the session, based on what I know about open questions or reflections, how did it go? So you can record that to then reflect upon it. And we're not expecting it to be perfect. We are nowhere near fight practitioners. So we want to just see, like you would do with the BPS or cases, a reflection upon your process. We then have exercise psychology, which Marcus leads on. So this is devoted just to exercise. So exercise appears in some modules, but we focus more on sport within some of them. So what we look at is, okay, what are the recommendations for physical activity for health reasons with specific focus on mental health? So what is the relationship between those? What's the utility in exercise to reduce mental illnesses or to support people while they're waiting for therapeutic treatment? We consider then why do people engage in exercise more or less, understanding this through behavioural models. How can we use this to design intervention, predict activity levels? And then how do we engage people to increase exercise behaviours to support healthier engagement in exercise, such as through motivational lenses? And we do this, we focus this through like a really applied lens again. So the assessment will be a hypothetical bid. So you'll be given a situation. So their local council will have come to you and they want you to develop an initiative for 16 to 18-year-old females to engage in physical activity once they leave education. Based on theory, can you develop an intervention, critically appraising and supporting through literature? So it's not just write a review on this. We try to do it forward focusing because that's what you'll do if you go on to work in a sport and exercise psychology context. And then the dissertation. So dissertation module is an independent piece of primary research. So you'll create and collect data and analyze that. So you apply to choose a supervisor for your dissertation. So there's a manual with us as staff, what our interests are, what methods we like to use. You apply to work with us through, you meet with us, say, yeah, I'd like to work with you. That seems to align. You've used that methodology or you're interested in this area. We then work together and you drive leading, designing a project and a research question. We then work together to submit your ethics application for that project. You then go and collect data and then we analyze the data and write up into a scientific paper format. So it's not like a 30,000 word dissertation, it's between 6,000 and 8,000 words. And we targeted towards a specific journal. Again, we think this is an important skill to write in a condensed way, but also allow you maybe to consider publication. So one of my students 2 years ago published. I just met with someone recently because we're going to start preparing their dissertation for a journal publication as well. And in terms of your submission, so you do the dissertation write-up. You also will have a portfolio of here's all the evidence of the work I've done. Also, this is the journal I would publish in. And then you also are required to present your research. That could be at our student conference, which we host for you on campus, which is all the different psychology disciplines coming together. Or you can do it in a professional context of your choice. And here's just an overview of the what the pattern of teaching is. Obviously, this is for not the upcoming years, but you can see we have typically a couple of weeks where we'll be on campus back to back for induction blocks, where we talk through the program, skills for getting up and running. We then have a 3-day block of face-to-face teaching where we engage very practically. And as you can see, then we go into our online weeks where we have our weekly content released, our drop-in sessions on and off campus, and optional meetings. And then we come back on campus for another block in week 6. And then we do the same again. So we have another 5 weeks off and then back on prior to Christmas. Most blocks, nearly all modules are represented other than this block because it's shorter. And then after Christmas, we typically go into an assessment period. So we try to not burden you with extra teaching while you're finalizing your assessments. So you can see we have these dedicated assessment periods to try and engage with that in most points where we can. And then we follow that similar pattern. We finish assessments, we go to teaching block 4, which is 3 days. And then our online lectures, and then we kind of come up to Easter. And then you can see actually by week 37, so the end of April here, this program's wrapped up teaching, and then we go into an assessment period. But you've also got your dissertation going alongside if you're full-time. On top of this, we have our sport pig sessions, which are advertised at different points. Some are online, there are optional in-person ones. We have guest speakers come in, and they're typically online as well. And we design optional activities based with our class reps and the cohorts, what you want from the program. You can see there at the very bottom, though, that dissertation is very end, so it's September, right? We nearly have a crossover with our new cohorts coming in. But that gives you time, as I mentioned, to develop something you're really proud of. I've touched on Sport Pig, so I'm not going to go back to that again. Here's just an opportunity to show our great AR image of our Sport Pig mascot. And finally, what our students said. Generally, we're really proud. I think one of our things we're most proud of is the student experience that people have and what people share with. So each year there's an anonymous survey shared with our students, the Postgraduate Taught Education Survey, and they're given numerical and textual responses. And people, I think they really value the guidance we give and what the profession looks like. We give lots of support while people are studying with us, and that through personal tutoring, through drop-in sessions, through our taught sessions, through Sport Pig. I think people value our experiences of the industry and our passion for this area. Like we love this area, we love reading, we love engaging, we love sharing our experiences, and we love supporting people that are interested in that. So we like to say our communication, we believe we're good at. We aim to respond to emails in 48 hours. We all set up meetings with people where people can click and book meetings without asking, just using our office hours. I think people value the practical assessments, as you can see here. And the overall scores, so we sit above 90% for overall satisfaction with the quality of the course and the university, which is for one of the university leading programs and one of a higher scoring program, I believe, in the UK for what people are, their satisfaction with the overall course design and the content and the engagement. So we are consistently performing at a high level. but we're, let's say, always open to developing, and we're trying to engage with new approaches such as AI engagement or technology that the university have to enhance our program. And I think the final part, people always come back to Sport Pig, which is optional, but people really value having the opportunities to engage with applied sports psychology while studying. So I didn't get, and typically the BPS don't encourage, it's not required for programs to do. They worry about that being safe, but we go above and beyond to make sure that there is opportunity. You can see how they anonymize our names there. So you can pause this if you, or come back to this if you want to read some of it. Okay. So I'm going to stop there. I've spoken for a lot of time. Sorry for that. Let me come back to my screen.